Good afternoon, good morning, I guess, depending on where it is that you are joining us from for this 44th episode of the EQ Lunch and Learn. My name is Mucha Mlingo, and I am delighted to have you join us today for this episode. And I'm looking forward to the conversation that we are going to have today. As always, it's not just driven by me. I have an awesome set of panelists who are going to help me to unpack our topic for today. We're talking about mental well being in this digital age, navigating stress with emotional intelligence. As we look over into next month, Mental Health Awareness Month, we thought that we would get you started with a conversation about mental health. In this episode, we will explore how emotional intelligence equips professionals to maintain mental wellness amidst the challenges, of the digital era. We will uncover tools for managing digital fatigue, stress, and the fast-paced nature of modern workplaces. So join us as always. As I tell you, you provide the lunch, we will provide the learning in this episode of the EQ Lunch and Learn. I have with me some fabulous ladies that I'm really excited to have. One is a resident PTS participant on this panel. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, she was with me here last month. But we do have another member of the team who I'm happy to have here. So today, you're blessed to hear from PTS faculty as we count down to our upcoming EQ for Africa Conference Mental Health Edition 3.0. And we'll tell you a bit more about that. But let me not get ahead of myself. Let me introduce my panel who are here with me. So I'd like to start by introducing Catherine. Catherine Dungu Waweru, a highly experienced entrepreneurship trainer, coach, and mentor with over a decade of dedication to empowering individuals in their entrepreneurial journeys. And I can attest to this. I have interacted with Catherine in her work supporting entrepreneurs, and she has worked as part of the PTS faculty for a number of years. Catherine, it's great to have you here today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Happy to be here, Mucha, and thank you for inviting me. And looking forward to a great session with you and the people live. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. As I mentioned, we're bringing back Susan. I think we should just call you our resident HR practitioner. Susan is a passionate and distinguished people leader with over 18 years of multifaceted experience in HR leadership and consulting combined. She's worked with small, medium, large enterprises where she's partnered with organizations to drive people and change initiatives that align talent and business strategy. She's also a member of the PTS faculty and recently joined the team as our lead partnerships and programs. Really excited to have Susan with us. She's also a coach, and she has a diploma in coaching, and she's also a 6 seconds practitioner as well. Susan, great to have you here. Welcome
Hi,
again to this stage.
everyone. Hi, happy to be here and looking forward, as always, to learning. I always learn something. We come on as panelists and we leave with a lot of learning. So, looking forward.
100%. I mean, it's the same for me. I come on as the moderator and I learn. So I'm looking forward to the conversation that we are going to have today. So if you are with us online on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or on YouTube, please do say hello so that we can see you and we can say hello right back. This is going to be a really great conversation, and I'm looking forward as we begin on a conversation about mental health, something that is very dear to my heart. So, ladies, as we unpack this conversation, we always like to start off with a question that is one to both of you, so that both of you can respond to the question. So let me dive in and get my questions in front of me as we get started. So I'd love to hear from you. You know, when we talk about mental health in the digital age, I'd love to hear from you just as you think about that topic, what comes to your mind, right? Just as we kind of get started and get our toes wet, as that comes to that topic came to you as we invited you to come and have this conversation, what came to your mind when you heard that topic? Susan, since I brought you on last, let me start with you, and then Catherine, I will come to you thereafter.
Thanks, Mucha. I was really excited when I saw the topic for this month's Lunch and Learn, because I feel like we talk a lot about digital transformation and how we can accelerate business, and we don't talk enough about the effect it has on mental wellness. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I looked at it, the first thing that came to mind is how the digital age has erased a lot of the boundaries that we used to have. And I was talking with some younger HR people, and I was telling them in my day, and that's where I am now. In my day, you would finish work and you close that shop and you leave your computer. It was a desktop, and you go home.
Mm,
And
mhm,
irrespective of whether the boss needs something or not, you knew that you would have to attend to it the next morning. But the
mm.
digital age and laptops and emails on our phones and being constantly on has erased those boundaries and therefore
Yeah,
impacts our mental wellness because we're always on. So that's my
yeah.
perspective on how the digital age is affecting mental wellness in the workspace, but also in our personal lives. You know, you used to have a date with someone, and if you agree it's 3 o'clock at Java, you're there at 3 o'clock at Java because there was no way of you canceling this deal. But now you're constantly on WhatsApp. Okay, let's shift it. That's 20 minutes too. So let's shift it. And at the same time, in the class, you're on a webinar and you're doing many, many things. So I think
Yeah.
digital transformation has been, a benefit to efficiency. But without managing ourselves well, we run the risk of it affecting our mental health adversely.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. You've made me laugh when I think about, dating back then and not being able to catch up with each other once the day has started. Catherine, your reflections as you looked at this topic, what came to your mind?
Uh, just to catch up a bit on what Susan was saying, you reminded me of my days of dating when we had to go to the booths. We are the generation of the booths. And when I think about the digital space, for me, it feels like being in the deep blue sea in choppy waters, and you're a ship that needs to maneuver. And it
Mm,
affects your full life, but you just have to be sane in that space. So I think in the digital space, talking about it right now, is the deeper we get into digital, the deeper we need to get into ourselves. We need to have a sane mind, and we need to control what gets into us as it's expanding. So in terms of mental wellness, I think it becomes more critical. As we're moving into this age, it becomes more critical because we need to get grounded in terms of our space, in terms of our emotions, and in terms of our emotional intelligence. As we're getting into
mm,
artificial intelligence, we need to be more in tune
yeah.
with our emotional intelligence. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me stay with you, Catherine. So, in this world where we're always switched on, as you've both
Yeah.
alluded to, how do we define mental wellness?
I think mental wellness would take us to what I would want us to, what I would think would discuss is more emotional intelligence and more
Mm,
in terms of not only emotional but also mental, in terms of our thinking faculty. How are we managing our thoughts in the whole sea, my thoughts of the sea of it? is how do we manage our thoughts and how do we manage our emotions. A brother of mine told me that his definition of emotional of emotions is energy in motion, and mental, I would say, is now the maybe the what will take place is probably the IQ is just being able to make decisions, being able to be true to yourself, to be authentic in the
Yeah.
storm of what's going on. If there's a storm, whether there's an ebb and flow, but just being grounded in who you are in this kind of space.
Mm, yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. I like that. Um, Susan, let me come to you on the same, right? So this idea that we are always switched on, as you said, what for you personally is your definition of mental wellness?
Yeah, thanks, Mucha, for that. And as Catherine was sharing, I was really nodding because I echo her thoughts. And with this always on, it feels like there's so much information and so much pressure coming at you at any given time, and so much demand on your time, your emotions, your energy, that mental wellness is the one's ability to cope with all of that, how they respond, or rather than react, how you internalize, how you process, how you discern what is important, what is not, how you decide where to spend your time and what to block. So mental wellness is that ability to rationally, calmly take in what is coming at you and decide this is useful for me, this is not useful for me, and how you then work with what is useful. So that's how I see mental wellness in this digital age. You need a lot of that discernment and self-management, like Catherine said.
Thank you for that. So, we'd love to hear from you if you're with us online. When you hear mental health in the digital age, what comes to mind? So, please do share in the comments, and it'll be good to hear from you. And don't forget to say hello, even if you don't want to respond to the question, just send us a hi so that we can just connect with you as you join us online today. Susan, let me stay with you as we continue in really unpacking this idea of mental wellness in the digital age. Um, Many organizations are really struggling with being able to support their teams, right, as far as mental health is concerned. Um, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in how mental health is being prioritized or ignored in people strategies today?
Thanks, Mucha. And I like the recognition that a lot of organizations are really struggling with how to support mental well-being for employees. The sad part of that is that it took for there to be a real mental health crisis per se before organizations realized how important this topic is and how much of a priority it is. So now we're at the point where organizations recognize that we have to see the person and we have to support them.
Yeah.
And it's great that we're there, but we have a lot of work to do. To put in place the right initiatives to do that. So, we have a lot of organizations that are now talking about mental well-being. It's part of their pillars or part of their values or part of their policies. And that's great progress because, there's some kind of commitment to the employee. Where I see the gap is in the actualization of that. And the
Mm,
actualization of that, remember, an employee joins an organization, yes, but they join a team, and that team has a
right.
leader. And that leader is the one that sets the culture, the microculture for that team, and what is important for that team. And this is where I would say I'm calling leaders to action to really prioritize the well-being of your team members. And that calls for a lot of EQ because it requires you to know, who am I as a leader? How do I lead? Who are my team members? What makes them tick? What are their struggles outside of the KPIs that I've given them? And how can I support that? Or how does that impact on how they perform? um, getting to know what drives them. So, what is it that's important to them that then I'm doing or not doing? So, yes, organizations have it in their ESG policy, they have it in their people policies, but the real call to action right here is for leaders to do it in practice, to really live it out, that you prioritize wellness. And in the digital age, it is a big call to action because we have a lot of virtual meetings going on. We have a lot of virtual management going on. So you're not seeing your people regularly, you're not connecting, and every Zoom call or Google Meet is about a particular task that we were tackling. There's really, I always say there's a leader of mine who used to have the script. She would quickly say, "How are you?" And then, so today, so I'm like, okay, she's ticked the box, she's asked, "How are you?" But she can wait for the answer. So we're trying. There's progress, but there's really a call to action to really internalize it.
I love that. Thank you very much for sharing. I think that's such an important point you make there, that very many organizations have the principles, or they have the what's the word I'm looking for, within the organization. They've drafted the policies. That's what I'm looking for. They've drafted the policies, but it's not necessarily the case that these policies are enacted. And in many organizations, perhaps they've not cultivated the kind of environment where people are comfortable enough to actually capitalize on the policies, because that's also important, right? I may have policies within my organization that allow me to take a mental health day, but if that's something that is not looked upon kindly, if after taking a mental health day I come back to the office and there's all these snarky remarks that are thrown in my way, I'm not going to take a mental health day in the future. So I really like your point around the fact that it's not just about having the policies, it's about enacting them. Paris, thank you for saying hi. Welcome to our conversation today. It's great to have you here with us. Catherine, let me come to you and just really ask you a question. You work with entrepreneurs and have worked with entrepreneurs for a very long time, right? And we're talking about this idea of navigating mental health in this time, in this season of being constantly plugged in, being in this ocean that's sometimes just buffering you about. What advice would you give entrepreneurs who feel overwhelmed by the constant pressure to stay relevant, right? And stay connected and stay plugged in? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs?
Um, Listen to Mucha would be one.
I like that answer.
I, I think entrepreneurs, there's been a lot of focus on entrepreneurs building on their technical skills. So every time an entrepreneur has a challenge, the intervention is throw them more tools, throw them the finance, throw them the sales and marketing. But very little focus is put into the entrepreneur and their mental status. And yet it is so huge
Mm,
because an entrepreneur can, okay, being in corporate Kenya, it was very easy to lock your computer and leave the office phone in the office and say that I'm giving my 8 to 5 or 8 to whatever hours I'm making. But an entrepreneur cannot actually switch off completely because everything evolves around the entrepreneur. So the pressure comes from all sources. It's
mm,
probably the tax man, it's the supplier, it's the licenses, it's the customer. I mean, you have to keep smiling to everyone. You have to go home, the children, there's there's so many things working around you. And sometimes the question is, who is going to think about me as an entrepreneur? Do you know what I'm going through mentally when I'm trying to juggle all these things? So I think
mm,
entrepreneurs need to either look for fellow entrepreneurs and unload and just share. So I'd encourage entrepreneurs to go for trainings. And when I'm training, in fact, what I find very interesting is a lot of times you find trainers say, and you'll find participants saying that have come for networking. And sometimes networking can interpret in the sharing where they ask, how did you deal with this issue? And it just
Mm,
decompresses a lot of things that you.
yeah.
The other thing that I think entrepreneurs also don't invest in is if your mental state is not good, you could easily bring mental illness, and that's not good for business and it's not good for you. So it's one of those things that are not technical, it's intangible, but you should also be very aware of yourself. You know your stress points, you know which customer really drives you up the wall, which supplier drives you up the wall, and just figure how you're able to balance that, because answers will have to come from you. So I think those are the things
Mm,
that entrepreneurs need to do. And we who are enablers who train entrepreneurs, I think it's about time we start focusing on training on entrepreneurship. And in fact, just to close this, I'm in an association called ASEC. It's Association of Startups and Enablers ASEC. And one session that was there, the CEOs, one CEO stood up and said, we do all these interventions, but do we have time for us? And so for every session
mm,
that we have with them, there is a mental wellness session just for
mm.
just for ESOs and just for entrepreneurs, just to be in touch with yourself and listen to others, bounce back ideas, get
Yeah,
answers, just
yeah,
feel a
yeah.
sense of getting different people who have one thing that they think about that can help them. Yeah. So that's what I would say. Get into your hobbies, get into music, and get into
Fantastic.
your music
Fantastic.
and
Yeah.
yeah, something different. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. I know one of the things you always say is that kind of art is your outlet, Catherine, something that you use to kind of decompress. Catherine is an amazing artist, even as she works to support entrepreneurs. That's one thing that she's really maintained for herself. Catherine, where the network is not so great, there's moments where we're losing you. But hopefully that you can still hear us. Susan, you sounded like you wanted to chime in there. Please
Yeah,
go ahead.
very cute. As Catherine was talking about the entrepreneurial journey and the self care that's necessary, I was just thinking about the same applies so much for HR professionals. Everybody can run to HR,
Mm.
but who does HR run to?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so HR was this it was became a very heavy profession to be in because you carry everyone's problems and you don't have a place to take those challenges, not their problems, but your own challenges. So whether you're leading the HR or you're in the department, you're not going to run to your boss to complain about your boss, right? So over the last couple of years, I've seen happening with the HR circles is slowly, there are little HR networking circles that try and do um, you know, uh, conversations, safe conversations. And then recently, we even had one very big social where we were just able to laugh and network and talk about some of the challenges that we see. And I think that really is a really important part of navigating your mental wellness, even as you grow in your leadership journey, whether as an entrepreneur, a HR professional, a business owner. It's really important to find out how to manage your wellness through a lot of self care, the society around you. So that resonated, and I was like, by the way, it's not just entrepreneurs; HR people are also why. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what I'm hearing you both say is that as leaders of people, as leaders of businesses, we need to understand that it's not just about the technical element of our role and supporting those that we lead, but it's also about ensuring that we ourselves are supporting ourselves, that we're attending to our mental health. And I really liked what you've both said, that some of that can just be some of that can simply be the fact that you have gotten together with others who are in a similar boat, so other entrepreneurs or other HR practitioners, to have real conversations about what's going on for you. Ruby, it's great to have you here. I see your comment. Indeed, entrepreneurs need community and the opportunity to bounce off ideas and fill their cups based on the heaviness of a majority of the load of business being on them. And one of the loads of being an entrepreneur is just the fact that everyone is relying on you, right? And that's a heavy load as you navigate the ups and downs of running a business. You come to end month and you're thinking, goodness, salaries have to be paid, and next month, and so I think that it's really important. And allow me to you guys have given me a great opportunity to plug the conference here in response to both of those comments. That was not intentionally done. That happened very naturally, I promise you, to those who are listening. So coming up next month, and I alluded to this, we have the EQ for Africa Conference Mental Health Edition 3.0, and we have curated a space where all of these categories will have an opportunity to get together so that they can explore what mental health looks like for them as a group, and also just really what they can do within their organization. So we have a very rich program with some panel discussions that we will have, and some stories from those who have their mental health journey that they will talk about and what they did to support themselves. But in addition, we also have 4 really fabulous mini workshops that each individual will be invited to participate in. So out of the 4, each person will choose one mini workshop. We have one mini workshop for leaders, leading through change, how to cultivate psychological safety and nurture mentally resilient teams. We have one specifically for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial resilience, where we're talking to entrepreneurs about managing stress, sustaining innovation, and prioritizing their own mental health. Then we have one for professionals, building personal mental agility, where we'll be looking at individual focused strategies for employees to navigate change and maintain mental well-being. And then lastly, we'll have a session for HR practitioners looking at building mental wellness within their organization. So what are some sustainable mental wellness strategies that can be implemented, and also how can the HR practitioners themselves get the support that they need? So this is something happening on the 16th of May, and you are very welcome to join us. We'd love to have you join us for that. You can visit the website www.eqforafrica.com for more information about that. Let's just continue with our conversation. I like the conversation Sophia, or the comment Sophia has added here. Hi, Sophia. Thank you very much for joining us today. Humans need other humans for self-care. We are not humans alone. We need each other for care. So it's we care as opposed to self-care. I like that. Sophia, thank you very much for sharing. Indeed, when we are together, we're able to support each other. And you know what? Sometimes it's just hearing that someone else is going through the same thing. And that's enough, right? Sometimes that's all you need, just to know that, okay, so I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one struggling, right? As an entrepreneur, I'm not the only one who's stressed with some of these things. Sometimes just that in itself makes a difference. So we are an EQ organization. So obviously, we're going to want to bring this to EQ, right? And I think it would be useful for us to just explore about where emotional intelligence comes in. So I'm going to ask both of you to just share your reflections on how has emotional intelligence become more critical than ever in managing stress in today's hyper digital world. I know you both touched on it a little. We talked a little bit about self-awareness, but it would be great to just unpack it a bit further. The idea of these EQ Lunch and Learn sessions is to help our audience, our community, to understand how emotional intelligence threads through all the different facets of our work. As a friend once said to me, and I love to quote, emotional intelligence is not just another skill to add to the plate of skills that you require to thrive in the workplace. Emotional intelligence is the plate upon which all other skills lie. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, ladies, on how emotional intelligence has become more critical than ever in managing stress in today's hyper digital world. Catherine, we can start with you, and then Susan will come to you on the same question. And for those online, please keep sharing your thoughts and reflections. Keep saying hi as we continue the conversation. Over to you, Catherine.
I think in this digital age, as you were talking about it, is there's a lot of talk. Let me start. I think the leap that we took after COVID, where we embraced digital work, um, offline work, all that compounded something, my take in it. In terms of entrepreneurship, if you have a team that is also not coming to the office on a frequent level, there's a certain link, there's a certain, I don't know how to put it. There's something that happens with the physical presence. You're able to read someone's mood, you're able to tell when they come in. But when you're doing the virtual calls and the person tells you that I'm not able to put my camera on, it may be more than just the camera being on. And therefore, there's a lot of disconnect that's also coming with the digital space. So, in emotional intelligence, where we say that we are self-aware of ourselves, I think we can also lose that. You might even get lost in understanding yourself, and that imbalance is not going to put you in a good place. And you've seen a lot of, and then there's a lot of stimulation from the social media. There's a lot of information that's coming in.
Mm,
There's a lot of relations that you, if you're thinking very low, and the algorithms take you down that path, it may not be. But just that disconnection now becomes a big issue in terms of
mm,
running a business where you may not be in touch with your staff. And the other thing that I also think is that being able to manage your spaces. There's a lady who said that it's about us. How do you build your teams to work together, knowing that there's a lot of information that is going around, and how you able to
mm,
cut across the different generations? For those of us who are using booths to date and computers that just happened, how do we become harmonious with a team where we also have the Gen Z who have grown up with all this digital space? So EQ is very critical, where every person understands where they are and how they plug into the management of working with our others, knowing that things are really changing, and being able to be in touch with our EQ
mm,
as AQ, let me call it AQ, AI, intelligence is also coming in. How do we keep our human self
mm,
centered or balanced as we are grasping everything that is going on, even as an entrepreneur? I mean, compounding all that after all we said, I mean, there's so many challenges in running entrepreneurship, and then bang, there's also this digital thing that also needs to encompass everything that you're doing. You're having the global connections. Maybe someone from China is listening to us, and you also
mm,
need to understand where they're coming from. So I think
mm,
also that just expands, and you can easily get an implosion as we're exploding in the digital space
mm.
and
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm just thinking about earlier, you talked about this idea, and I paraphrase, but this idea of almost being lost at sea, or you're in this big ocean, and the waves are pushing you to and fro. Thinking about that analogy you used, we could say then that emotional intelligence becomes that little life raft, or that little, the ring that they throw out into the ocean to keep you
Yeah.
balanced and stable as you navigate the ups and downs of the waves. Susan, your reflections on how
Yeah.
EQ is critical to navigate the stress that we face in this time of heightened digital stimulation and connection.
Thanks, Mucha. And before I go to answer that one, I was just thinking about the imagery around the ship at sea and turbulence, and I don't even think EQ is the raft. I think
Mm.
if you watch any of those kids movies where there's somebody with the power to freeze everything, I think that's what EQ is a little bit more like, where you're like the ocean
Mm.
stop and you have that stillness that allows you
Yeah.
you have that stillness that allows you to process and respond rather than react, and
Yeah.
decide what is the true threat here, what is not, what is the opportunity. I think the EQ is that
Yeah.
ability to not be consumed by the circumstance, but to manage yourself. So now on to
Yeah.
your question, how do we manage our stress or and everything else that we're feeling in this digital age? And I do really like that analogy of the storm because that's what it really feels like. Everything is coming at you. There's high pressure for work. There's high pressure from social media. You're trying to keep up. There's something coming at you at all times. And you find that even sleep doesn't happen the way it's supposed to because the last thing you do is
Mm.
you're on your phone and you've planted many thoughts to keep processing. So I like to break down, as you know, I like to break a question down so that it makes sense. So when we think of EQ, what are we talking about? So we have our self awareness, we have our self management, we have our social awareness, we have our empathy. It calls for a lot of presence. Yeah. And EQ, no one is an EQ expert. I mean, PTS, we are all focused on emotional intelligence. We focus all our energy and our learning and constant development, but we're not EQ experts because we are all
Mm.
on this journey of constantly building that muscle. It's a skill that everybody can build with the right assistance and the right information, the right coaching, the right training. So when you think of your
Yeah.
self awareness, even if I master my self awareness today, by tomorrow I'll have new things that have happened to me and I am evolving as a person. So you have to constantly
Yeah.
be ready to invest in your self-awareness. Who am I? Whose am I? What are my values? What guides my decisions? Then when you go to the self-management, it's what Catherine was talking about. There's a lot of self-care, but there's also a lot of I happened to catch Mucha's one of Mucha's recent posts, and it was about just take 5 minutes to take it in and decide what your response to anything is, whether it's a decision you need to make or an opportunity you're looking to take your 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's part of your self-management, is just take the time, pause and take the time rather than rushing as the world is kind of telling us to do all the time, to rush. And then the social awareness bit about it is um, how are you interacting and building relationships? We have a lot of false relationships in this digital age. I have friends on Facebook, I have connects on Instagram, and we, connect now
Mm.
and again. And I had somebody who I thought is a friend today reaching out, and we realized we've not met for the last 2.5 years. We've not had a real
Mm.
conversation. We've just been exchanging memes and jokes and whatnot. So being aware of what your social networks really are, the true ones, is part of your EQ journey and building yourself up for EQ so that then you're in a healthy position to navigate this storm that is the digital age. And on social awareness, I
Mm.
want to mention one thing that is for anyone who's in a leader in whatever capacity, whether in an organization or in your church or in your family or whatever space you're in, one of the things that's becoming critical in social awareness is being able to identify when you or others are in trouble. And
Mm.
we are often missing the signs. So, just as Catherine said, somebody says their camera is off because they can't put it on, and you assume it's a technical hitch. But
Mm.
maybe that person, if they came on, you would be able to see grooming has gone down, or their energy is way off, or they're completely disengaged. So EQ is, and I like what Sophia said, I think it's Sophia, it's a we care. So we need to be our brother's keeper to be able to navigate this storm. So it's not only taking care of myself, but also being aware enough to see when somebody's in trouble and then freeze the storm.
I like that. I like that. Thank you very much for sharing. I love that vision of freeze, and everything stops. There's definitely been very many movies and the like that, have someone with that kind of power to freeze things. Susan, let me stay with you because I think we've spoken, overall about how EQ and our perspective is that EQ is a critical skill to be able to navigate stress in this age. And I see that Sophia has also commented here about how EQ is crucial, right? Knowing who you are, how you manage yourself, how you manage relationships with others at work, home, and play gives you a head start in managing stress. Taking time to develop EQ is said to improve staff retention for HR and leaders and create successful companies. I 100% agree with you, Sophia. Actually, I see EQ as one of the preventative measures that we can utilize within our organizations when we invest in building the emotional intelligence of our leaders and of our teams, starting with our leaders so that they don't just know the concepts, but they walk the talk, and then trickling it down across the organization. This actually cushions us against the effects of mental health challenges. Doesn't mean that people won't suffer. It just means that they have tools that they can, utilize in the moments when that, C becomes something overwhelming. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Sophia. So we've talked about the idea of EQ being important, but what I want us to do, Susan, is just dig a little deeper, right? And go to a little more practical level when it comes to emotional intelligence. So let me stay with you, Susan, and think about or ask you, can EQ be taught as a lens for empathy and awareness, especially in high demand work cultures? Because the reality is we say all these things are essential, they're nice, they're good, but the reality qua ground is different when people go into our workspaces. Talk to us a little bit about how the practicalities of how EQ can make a difference within organizations, especially in high demand work cultures. And then, tagged onto that, talk to us a little bit about some of the practical steps that leaders can take. Remember, we're linking EQ and mental health in this digital age. So what are some of the things that leaders can practically do, leveraging this idea of EQ being important in this hyper digital world?
Thanks, Mucha. I like that. I threw a call to action and you threw it back to me like, okay, you said they act.
Yes.
Yeah. So EQ, first of all, EQ definitely is a skill that can be developed. As I mentioned earlier, everyone who is intentional about developing their EQ can. It's a skill that we learn the tools, we learn how to be aware, and we can all develop it. But as I've said there, it's intentionality. There needs to be some intentionality because it's a constant engaging a certain gear every time that you are growing as a person. So just the same way you would take if you're an accountant, you take your CPA qualifications very seriously and you'll do your practicing and you'll do your studying. EQ calls for similar effort to develop yourself as an impactful leader. And an impactful leader is not one that delivers on the KPIs and ends up with an army of all wounded soldiers. An impactful leader is one who walks the journey with their team. And even when their team wants to leave, they know that they're letting go of somebody who has grown and is able to go and continue shining with that backdrop of, I worked with Mucha and this is what I'm able to do now because of the impact they had on me. So EQ then becomes very important or very impactful. I mean, I think if you're a leader, you want to be that impactful leader. And how so? Because as Sophia has said, we've recognized that taking care of the person, leading the person is a more effective tool to engaging the team and therefore, and which results in a lot of retention and results in high productivity. And I said leading the person and not leading the goal. Yeah. So not leading the KPI, lead the person, see the person and lead the person. And it's a lot of work. I wouldn't lie to you. It's a lot of work. There requires a lot of engagement, getting to know who your people are, getting to know what their journey is in and outside of the office. But it's good work because I would like to believe as a leader, you want to have sustainable impact in everything that you're touching and doing. How is EQ therefore where does it fall into this whole digital space, and how can we actually activate it? So first of all, I identify as a leader. I want to be an impactful leader. And as Susan has said today, EQ is the key to that. And she's told me what those three things are. But what more? Where can I get to know more about it? And there are programs I know. And this is not a plug, but PTS has various programs, whether online or, there's coaching available. There's the upcoming conference where you interact with other leaders, entrepreneurs, HR practitioners. Start to be engaged in those conversations on a regular, and then take that learning back to your team. So when we talk about
Mm.
practical steps, is allocate specific time in your meetings to touch base on wellness. How are you as Mucha? What's going on today in your life? Catherine, what's
Mm.
going on? How are you? Are you coming in gray? Are you coming in yellow? And once that becomes a regular practice, you start to exercise that muscle. EQ is like any other muscle. In you go to the gym, you exercise, you get stronger at it. Through those conversations, you start to develop how you listen. You start to develop the relationships because you're getting to know your people, and they start to see you authentically. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
most easiest place to start, Mucha, is allocate time to have real interactions with your team members. And then you'll start to see that
Mm.
even the hunger for developing the skills will lead you to identify where you can get resources like PTS Africa offers, and then where
Yeah.
you can get into conversations, webinars, whatever. You start to hunger for it and grow. And whatever you learn there, you come back and apply. And then that's how your practice grows your muscle.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Before I come to you, and ask you for kind of a similar question, but really focusing on entrepreneurs, there's a couple of things you said, Susan, that made me smile. So Susan wasn't referring to me as a leader, as the one who asks, "How are you?" and then dives straight into the conversation. But that's the kind of leader I have been. Right. In the past, very focused on the goal, very focused on the KPI. And my EQ journey, me personally, my EQ journey has taught me to lead the person. There are times where I will send a WhatsApp to a member of the team, and I don't know if they've noticed this, but there are times where I've sent a message, a WhatsApp message to the member of the team, and I've just jumped in to what I'm asking for, and then I go back and edit the WhatsApp message to say, "Good morning. How was your weekend?" Because I've caught myself in the moment where I've literally, because that's just my default. I am goal oriented, and I think this is why for me emotional intelligence is so important, because that self-awareness of recognizing what your default tendency is so critical. Now that I know I have a tendency to focus on the KPI, I can hold myself accountable to focusing on the person, to leading the person. So that's one thing that came to mind when you were talking, and as I was reflecting on what you said earlier, about the conversations we have. And then I think the second thing is, as leaders, if we start shifting the kind of language that we use. I really like what you said, Susan, about how starting the meeting and asking, how are people coming in? Are you coming in gray? Are you coming in yellow? And if you're coming in gray, what do you need from us? What support do you need from us? Right? Or is it just that you wanted to share? I'm coming in gray. I don't really want to talk about it. Right? And that's okay. I think when we start to shift the kind of conversations we have, we make talking about what we're feeling normal and natural. And it must come from the front. You must lead as the leader from the front and share this, so that the rest of the team then become comfortable in saying, "Yeah, today I'm yellow. Goodness gracious, I'm bouncing off the walls." So if you're not in a good place, you might want to stay away from me, because you know what I mean? And you when you start speaking like that, it becomes like an internal conversation. It's like a side a conversation that's known to your team. So I really like those points you made. Catherine, I want to come to you, reflecting on the same idea, right? This idea of, let's be practical, right? How can we be practical as entrepreneurs, battling with the many things that we battle with? Entrepreneurship often involves high uncertainty, right? How practically can emotional intelligence help an entrepreneur to really navigate, and what can an entrepreneur do, some practical steps to start building this emotional intelligence that we are saying is really important.
I think the first thing I would say is emotional intelligence should be should be a lifestyle. It should be a
Mm,
state of being, so that you don't compartmentalize it. You say that emotional intelligence works here and it doesn't work here. It should just be a way of living. And for an entrepreneur, whether you have a small business wherever you are, I keep saying it doesn't cost you to have a cup of tea. That's a very good way to engage with your staff. Buy them on
yeah.
does because
uh,
it's a level of you're not saying that now I want to be empathetic, but there's a level of understanding that you need to get energy, and therefore I'm offering you a cup of tea that has sugar and it just works you. I mean, just small things like that. Just leave it out. When you're saying hi, and it was just say that don't say hi and then quickly move on to the next thing, or have this face of where you're the good person and then you're like this other person that changes immediately. It should encompass everything that you do. And you should also be aware of the language that you use, because that can undo all the empathy that you have. You may have, you
mm,
may be very sensitive in the way you speak to maybe your staff. You may be very insensitive in the way you handle your customers. So just being aware that even when you're stressed, I love when we say that we take 6 seconds not to react,
mm,
but to
mm,
respond. Let it be a way of life in
yeah.
every situation that you have. Even when things are going wrong, you have a deadline, it's surpassed. Are you able to keep that calm and work on it in a rational way? And I think what it also wanted to put and also add on to what my sister said is that I know we came from an age of closed doors where it was more transactional, and then we talked about open doors. And both I think were good systems. But I think emotional intelligence is able to have the closed door when you have to have your staff speaking a one-on-one with your staff, but also have open doors where you're also showing by physical space that I'm accessible. So maybe we should play around with transactional kind of relating with our staff, and also have relational way of dealing with our staff or with the people who are around us. So in every situation, just have be is it alive? Be buoyant. When things are thick in the deep seas, don't drown. But just have a
Mm,
level where you're able to keep afloat in all situations. You're able to keep your sanity. And by keeping it, then everyone around you kind of borrows from that. And I think the other thing about entrepreneurship, even as we're running in our businesses, you rarely find clients who want to work with highly strung entrepreneurs. So it is also beneficial to you to look like you're in charge of your business, you know what you're doing. Because, like in the business I am in, and I'm also in corporate branding, I always say sometimes we're the counselors for our clients, because we understand if you don't meet that deadline, then you're going to get the hit, because you know your client is getting the hit from their boss. So you also have to practice your emotional intelligence even when you're dealing with your clients, because you don't know where they're coming from. You probably don't have a boss you're talking to, but everything you're doing is pegged on their performances or the KPIs of the client that you're working
yeah.
with. So it's really important to
Mm,
be very aware of your space you are in, and also be very aware of the ecosystem that you're building, so that you're able to build your business and build the people around you. And I think the other thing that I want to say in closing is I think in emotional intelligence, as we are aware of ourselves and we are aware of our surroundings and managing an empathy, also allow yourself to receive it. So if someone extends empathy, also receive it. Don't be the one
mm,
dishing it. And when someone wants to dish it, it's strange. Because there's some of those situations where you're a doctor, you don't know how to treat yourself, but also allow yourself
yeah.
to be doctored in the situations that you are in, so that you're able to grow. Lie on someone's shoulder and cry on it, because tomorrow you'll be the one who'll be offering the shoulder. Back to you.
Oh man, I tell you, if we were in church, we'd be saying amen, amen, amen. Susan, I can see you nodding there. I really like that last point you made because I think as entrepreneurs, it is the case that we're very big on supporting others, whether it's our team, whether it's our clients, our community, but very often we kind of shrug off the support extended to us, right? We shrug it off, we minimize it, right? And we don't truly pause in that moment and say, yeah, you know what? Yes, I do need that affirmation, for example. I do need that hug, or I do need that coffee that has been extended to me. And I think that's really important. Did you want to say something, Susan, there?
Amen. Yeah, I was really, I resonate with everything that Catherine is saying and how important it is. And then, yeah, as if it were not enough, she added that last nugget about it, receiving support and also empathy. And I would take it even a stretch further, not only empathy from others, but also extend empathy to yourself. The same way that you are as
True,
empathetic as you are with others,
true.
be the same with yourself. But yeah, amen, amen.
Yeah. Yeah, because we are very hard on ourselves as entrepreneurs, right? And I'd like to imagine that it's the same for HR practitioners, right? One of the things that we try and do on this EQ Lunch and Learn is that we're not only bringing you people who are knowledgeable in the space of EQ, but people who have the experience that we're talking about, right? So people who have walked that journey. And so, when Catherine talks about what is useful for entrepreneurs, she's speaking from experience as someone who runs a business. Likewise, as Susan is talking about HR practitioners, she's speaking as someone who has worked in the space of HR and supporting people. And I think that both those categories of individuals often don't extend empathy inwards. Right? They often don't extend empathy inwards. They may be very good at extending empathy outwards, but yeah, inwards is something they don't do so well. And so I think it's really important that as others extend empathy to you, receive it, but also be intentional about extending empathy to yourself. If you're with us online and you have a question, you can share it with us. Just type it in the comments, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and my panel will come to your question at this time. I'm always amazed at how quickly the time goes. It's soon going to be time to start winding up our conversation. So if you have any questions, please do share them. Sophia, it's really great to have your comments coming through today. Here's another comment. Unfortunately, the digital age has the risk of creating individualistic and self-preservatory behaviors, which are the opposite end of EQ. The digital world has created many opportunities, but if not managed well, misses the true success of relationship building. And this is the point that you both made earlier, right? This idea that because for many we're connecting remotely, we may miss some of those nuances that we may have been able to pick up on. And so it requires those leading teams, those leading teams to be more proactive about paying attention, right? To listen more keenly and to if necessary, when you see certain flags, and I want to come to that. What are some of the flags that we can look out for as entrepreneurs? We're leading our teams. What are some of the flags that we can look out for that we can pay more attention to? And likewise, as HR practitioners in the workplace, what are some of the flags? I'm going to come to both of you on that. But yeah, the digital world means that sometimes we miss those flags, right? The three success factors for the human in whatever position they are is relationships, relationships, relationships. And I really like this idea of we care versus self-care. It's impossible to lead without love. And it goes back to the point you made earlier, Susan, that you're leading people rather than the KPI. So yes, please share your comments in the chat. Susan, let me stay with you, and just I'll come to you, Catherine, afterwards as you follow up that amen that you shared. What are some of the signs that we can look out for. So I'm an HR practitioner, and I am, wanting to be more intentional about noticing when people are struggling, when people are overstimulated, overconnected. What are some of the signs that I can look out for? And I think it would be interesting, Susan, if you're able to share both what are some of the signs for others, right? So as an HR practitioner, I must look out for others. But what are some of the signs for me? If we're saying that I need to extend empathy inward, what are some of those kind of signs that I need to look out for, pay attention to, that indicate that, okay, perhaps there's some imbalance here that I must attend to?
Thanks, Mucha. I'm glad you came around to this one, because I did earlier say that we're missing a lot of signs that would help us to identify when there's a challenge with mental wellness. So I'll answer both together as HR and as a leader, how to identify it in others, because I'll answer it together within myself because they're similar signs. So as a leader or HR professional, some of the things you can identify as red flags for mental wellness are changes in behavior. So it could be anything from changes in productivity, changes in timeliness. This person usually logs on 5 minutes before. Suddenly they're coming in late. Changes in their energy. So, and it could go either way. So suddenly this person has become very sluggish, or suddenly they're hyper. They're outside of their normal energy realm. So it could go either way. So changes in their energy, changes in their grooming. My daughter laughs at me because she says, "Mom, I know you can't go anywhere without earrings. Even if you forget your earrings, you'll stop in a shop and wear earrings." Suddenly, Susan is showing up without her earrings. It's not as detailed as that, but changes in grooming, or changes in like character, or their mood. So usually Mucha is soft spoken, but now everything that comes up in the meeting, she wants to shout about it. She wants to get in an altercation, or completely detaching. So no connection, no engagement in interactions, whether in a meeting or on the corridors. And those are the things that we would lead us to want to find out more. I'm not saying that somebody having a bad day and they show up a bit sluggish, or they had a late and that suddenly we identify and label it as mental wellness red flag. But what it should do is, I want to find out more about what's happening. Have that coffee and see, just do a check-in. Check-ins are so effective, really don't take that much time, but very effective in building relationships and giving you an opportunity to know how to support your people. Now, when I look at myself, the same applies. If I am sleeping and I usually wake up at 6 a.m. and now I'm struggling to wake up at 6 a.m., I need to start asking myself, what's going on? I notice it as a behavior. If I am noticing changes in my appetites, I need to. If my phone rings and usually I'm excited to pick up a call, but now I look at it and I'm cringing, I need to check it with myself. If I'm snapping at myself, others, whether at home, in the workplace, I need to check in with myself. So the red flags don't serve as a prescription or a diagnosis. The red flags give us an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and find out what happens, what could be happening, and what can we do about it. Now, the challenge here is that you need to have some appreciation of who you're dealing with. You need to be a leader who knows your people, so that you're able to identify when these changes happen, and also know how to approach them when you want to approach them. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think, leadership is hard work, right? It really requires us to invest in knowing our people and noticing the differences that exist, and thinking to yourself, like you said, this individual always has a question in meetings, and yet they have been very quiet. And I think one of the things you've said that's so critical is, it's not like now a witch hunting, I've made a determination kind of thing. It's a checking in, right? And I think it goes back to the point Sophia made about relationships. So as I check in, it's because I'm doing this from a relational perspective, right? I value the relationship. I value the person, and so I'm checking in. Catherine, what would you add?
Before
It
you go
may
to
be yes, 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 yes.
Catherine, you know, one of the signs that we really miss, people actually tell us we're not okay. I'm not okay. And we brush it off
Mm,
a lot of times. And we're like, you'll be okay. You go
mm,
for lunch and then you come back. We need to start
mm.
listening a little bit harder. When somebody tells you, I'm not okay, understand what do
Yeah,
they mean I'm not
yeah,
okay? We really
yeah,
do miss that
yeah.
one often. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. One of the things I'm learning because of my practical nature, when someone comes to me to share that they're not okay, or when I'm listening to a friend and they're downloading whatever challenges they're going through, one of the things I've learned to do is to ask how the person wants me to support them, because my default is to go into problem solving mode. And so one of the things I've learned, and I'm helping my community to learn about me, is to tell me, okay, so is this where you just want me to listen? Is this where you want us to go into action? Like, how can I support you so that I support you best, so that I don't dive into problem solving when someone just wanted you to listen? So even that individual, Susan, to your point, who says, I'm not okay, how can I support you? Right? What support do you need from me? Because perhaps all I needed was, let's go for a walk. Let me, unload what's going on. And as soon as I'm done, you know what? I'm good. So yeah, I like that. Let's really listen and, yeah, respond accordingly. Catherine, perhaps some of what you will say will be similar to what Susan says, but what are some of the flags as an entrepreneur that I must pay attention to? And the same question to you. So both in terms of my team. So what are some of the things I need to be looking out for as I run my business? But also, what are some of the signs I need to be looking out for myself as I look inward that would help me to notice that, okay, I'm out of balance, I'm tipping towards burnout?
I think one of the signs is when every day is a Monday and you don't.
Yes.
You just don't have the fire, you don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation. Even when your
Mm,
best client calls in, you're dragging your feet. You're not switched on,
yeah,
you don't feel like you want to
yeah,
do it. And I think the other thing is talk. Working. How are you? You'll not say I'm fine. I know there's a way when you ask someone a question, they say, not bad. And I keep asking, why are you using a negative to detonate, to speak a positive? So
mm,
that could be an indication when you start using negative language in circumstances that you really don't have to. And the other thing
yeah,
is, you feel the world is out to get you. I mean, you have this overwhelming thing that when Mucha calls me, she has a problem. When Susan wants to speak to me, even if it's a joke, you don't see the joke. You sit
mm,
as a person criticizing. You're not seeing anything positive about it. I think those are some of the signs that I would imagine as an entrepreneur, when things are really
yeah,
thick, then it is compounded.
yeah,
Everything is in the lenses of that, and that's something that
yeah,
I always think about myself and I say, when every day is a Monday, then there is a problem. I need to change it to a
mm,
Sunday. What is it that I need to do? How do I build that excitement? Is it just calling my friends and telling them? I mean, just
mm,
talking about anything. It could even be a movie,
yeah,
but nothing to do with the business. And then after that,
yeah,
it's like a deep breath out and I'm able to do that. But like she's saying, even the grooming. I mean, you have a meeting uh, and you're not groomed well, and it doesn't bother you. I mean, when grooming doesn't bother you, then there is a problem. Yeah. So
yeah,
those are some of the signs. And in terms of staff, they may come in on time, but believe me, they'll just be busy with a why and not busy with we say it's not business with an I, but business with a Y, meaning that they're just going to move around. But in terms of productivity, it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to address
Yeah.
that to find out why are we not able to get things out, those could be the
Yeah.
cues. Or they want to quit, or there's a certain aggression that comes in. Um,
Mm.
Monotones, where you had a full conversation, how you doing? I'm fine. No, yes. And then that also reads into a certain aggression that tells me that it may not be about you, it may be what is going in their spaces that you need to address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To check
Or
in.
when they're,
Yeah. I like
yes,
that.
they're scary,
Mm.
uh, anything you tell them, you had a good, they're not laughing with you, and those are things that really come out for me when we're running the business.
Yeah.
Back
I
to you.
like that. I like that. Thank you. I like that. Thank you for sharing. I think that when you think about the self, the ones you started with, and that you've lost your mojo, right? And I think it's okay as an entrepreneur to have a bad day, and it possibly even is normal to have a bad week. But if it just becomes persistent, that, like you say, it's just always a Monday, the sky is always gray, and everything is now colored by that grayness, then indeed, we need to pay more attention and look at how can I, support myself to navigate, because it's normal to go through those periods where the clouds are dark. And I think it doesn't even have to be related to how the business is doing, right? So you may find that the business is doing well, but you're still in that space. And I think it's really important for us to really find spaces where we can get the support that we need, so that we can run our businesses more successfully. Before we kind of come to winding up, and I'll ask you for your parting shot, I have a question here from Sophia. Um, Susan, maybe I can ask you, and then Catherine, if you have anything you want to add, you can add to it. How can EQ be embedded into policies and practices of organizations as opposed to an add-on? I think that's a really great question that Sophia has. Susan, your thoughts?
Thanks, Sophia. And Sophia, I just want to appreciate you because you've really been engaging, and I'm
100%.
enjoying your engagement a lot, and learning as
100%.
well. Yeah. So I think, let me take it a step back. So policies and procedures are meant to give guidance on how we live out what we do when you think of HR policies and procedures. And the anchor of it is actually in your culture. So your policies and procedures should be reflective of your culture. So rather than coming up with a standalone EQ policy that often sits with your ESG or is an appendix or only showing up in your code of conduct, you need to go back to how is EQ showing up in your culture. And then now the
Mm,
policies will be reflective of that. And it starts with everything from, take, for example, a performance management policy. So moving your performance management from it being transactional, we do it every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. It's moving it to we are building a relationship where we're building a performance culture. So our performance management is no longer an event that happens at specific months, but we are now moving our managers to a point, our performance managers, to a point where they're having regular conversations about performance. So it's bringing your EQ into your policies, into your culture, so that your policies and practices are anchored on that culture that embeds emotional intelligence. So you go back to all your policies and procedures and look at, is this reflecting a culture of emotional intelligence? Is this building relationships? Is this demonstrating empathy? So even as, looking at your last expense, what do you do for an employee who has lost someone or who has gone? Is this reflecting the kind of empathy that we stand for as an organization that holds EQ as a pillar? So go back within all your policies and procedures and have a very clear idea of how you want EQ to feature in your culture, and then you'll be able to translate it into your existing policies and procedures.
mm. I like that. Thank you very much. I think that, it's also really important, if we want to have something as part of our culture, to ask ourselves, what are we measuring, right? One of the things that Catherine and I do together is also work with sales teams, right? So apart from the work that Catherine does on supporting entrepreneurs, she's also got a background in sales and marketing, and we have done some sales training together. And one of the things we I mention whenever we do sales interventions is this idea that we can say how important relationships are, how important empathy is, and connecting to our customer. But at the end of the day, if we're just rewarding the person who's got the highest sales, regardless of how they got their sales, what shortcuts they took, how they treated the rest of the team, and possibly even the customer, then it's of no use to say that this is something that's important. So I think as we look at our policies and procedures, we also have to look at our reward mechanisms. What are we measuring? What are we rewarding? What are we recognizing? Because that then also influences or impacts what actually gets done within the organization. Yeah. Wow.
Amen.
Oh my
Amen.
goodness. We have just a few
I think
minutes to go. Yes, go ahead.
I think just to chip in that conversation, it's I think it is one
Mm.
of those things that are intangible but have an
Yeah.
impact. And
Yes.
then my thoughts would be, even as we put it in culture, how to make it alive is to look at the leaders and also have programs, mentorship programs that are ongoing, where they're able to act them out even with the leaders, and they're able to know how to act them, to use them with their staff. So just making it
Mm.
alive by either shadowing or having a mentorship program or a coaching program that really
Yeah.
focuses on
Yeah.
those on EQ, that because what it is on paper, it needs to be practiced. And as we know, like riding
Yeah.
a bike or swimming, it needs to be done continuously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are there
100%.
experts who can be embedded in the system, where they're out there to help themselves, to help others, to help the organization with some of these skills that they're able
Mm.
to recognize when to
Mm.
be empathetic, when to see a fraud, and just when to how to manage yourself in that space. That would be my input.
Allow me to just add a
100%.
little
Thank
bit
you.
there, Mucha.
Yes, please. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So, as Catherine said, EQ, we might say, is intangible, but the impact is what we see.
Mm.
And the other approach, in addition to we've invested in developing these leaders in their EQ, we need to measure it as well. And I think, Mucha, you alluded to
Yeah.
it. So give
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to the led to give feedback on their leaders. So whether by a 360
Mm.
evaluation, so we say, as an organization, EQ is important to us. So let's measure that EQ, just the way your sales number is
Yeah.
important. Let's see how are our leaders impacting on the people they are on. Give them an opportunity, through 360 feedback
Mm.
or through various assessments that leaders can undertake to get feedback on how they're doing on their EQ journey. And that starts to reinforce that culture that you're looking for, Sophia.
100%. And Sophia says spaces for community building, vulnerability, and relationship building is pure gold in a company. I think, it's so important that leaders walk the talk when it comes to something like emotional intelligence. It's not enough to say, oh, we're going to roll out an EQ training within our team, and we're going to invite Mucha to come in and facilitate. It's a lot more than that. The leaders then have to really walk the talk on EQ so that we can begin to make that shift, that culture shift. Thank you again, Sophia, for the way you have interacted with us. It's really been great having you as part of today's EQ Lunch and Learn. Ladies, I'm going to come to you for your parting shot. And perhaps in your parting shot, let's just also talk a little bit about the conference. So, as I mentioned earlier, next month on the 16th of May, we have our EQ for Africa Conference Mental Health Edition 3.0, which will be in Nairobi. And you can visit the conference website for more details, www.eq4africa.com. When I started, or when I mentioned it earlier, I talked about the fact that we're going to have mini workshops, and both Susan and Catherine will be facilitating those mini workshops. So Catherine will be facilitating the conversation with entrepreneurs around building resilience as an entrepreneur and how to truly chase after those big, hairy, audacious goals that you have for your business, whilst making sure that both you and your team are actually, in a good space. Susan will be talking about how HR practitioners can drive that culture internally that has a focus on mental well being, as well as ensuring that the HR practitioner themselves, excuse me, maintains balance. So, ladies, as you do your parting shot, please just maybe in 30 seconds, just talk a little bit about this workshop that you will be running, just to entice our audience to make sure that they do join us for the conference. So, Catherine, would you like to go first? And then Susan will close off with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mucha, and also for that conference. I think it's quite critical for entrepreneurs to attend this conference. And the reason I'm saying this is directly related to Susan, in that entrepreneurs don't have HRs for themselves. And therefore, this load is upon them. And this is, as an entrepreneur, I felt this is one space that has not been addressed. I have gone for multiple technical skills, but I haven't had that one that really helps me address me. So I'll call upon entrepreneurs to come and share their experiences. The workshop is going to be interactive. What are the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur? Are you hard? Do you see yourself as a leader that needs to be empowered with EQ skills like any other organization? Because you are running a team, you are running yourself as a leader, and you're running a team, and you're also in an ecosystem that requires you. I mean, Susan would be my client. I need to be on the same page with Susan. And this is a conference that will merge the minds of entrepreneurs and the people that you're working with. Whether you're in the service industry as a consultant, whether you're in the product industry, it is one skill that entrepreneurs need to embrace for them to move to the next level and to leap to the next stage in their life. So I'm looking forward to seeing you and listening to your conversations about what you feel about EQ. Do you feel that you're missing out on something? Are you burning out? Do you have a burnout? Let's discuss that. How do you keep your mojo going? Let's just have that discussion on that day. Thank you. Back to you, Michelle.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Catherine. Susan, over to you.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Mucha, just first for this wonderful conversation. As I had hoped, I have learned quite a bit from you and the audience. My parting shot, I think everyone should go back and sit with that image of that storm, and then that thought of being able to freeze it. So you could freeze it to enable you to wear your life vest, or you could freeze it so that you can disappear into the sky, or you could freeze it so that you can analyze everything. But I think EQ gives you that opportunity to be able to pause in time with this digital age where so much is coming at you, and decipher and determine and then unfreeze and be able to move on. The PTS, the EQ for Africa conference, I'm looking forward to it. So before we get to the mini workshops, there's a lot of interaction of the different groups that Mucha mentioned. It's not just for entrepreneurs, it's not just for HR, it's not business leaders.
Yes.
Everyone who's interested in starting their journey or continuing their journey of building the EQ muscle, let's come and learn from each other. It's not just about listening from the panel, but there's a lot of interaction of questions, sharing ideas. And as we said, no one is a master yet, but we can really benefit from learning from each other. Now, on the mini workshops, and allow me to get HR biased now, this is our time, guys. We have two big issues that we're dealing with when it comes to EQ. One is that everyone is expecting for us as HR people to drive this conversation. So we need to be on top of how do we lead or facilitate or drive these conversations. And by our having our mini workshop, we start to have an idea of how we go about it or how we can better how we've been doing it. The second challenge is we carry the load of the people in our organizations. And we don't necessarily have a place to go and dump it because our issues that we deal with are highly confidential. The issues that we deal with are highly sensitive. And so we have this, oath where we sit with everything and we hold it. But how is that affecting us as individuals? As a HR
Mm,
professional, how is my mental wellness when I exercise empathy 24/7 for others? Am I doing it for myself? How do I go back home and deal with my family who, again, wants my empathy, patience? You know? So let's come and have a mini workshop, have a conversation where we pull it all out and then put it all back together and walk away with at least an idea of how to do the balancing, having learned from each other.
mm.
So, looking forward to seeing you all there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ladies. In addition, we'll have a session for leaders, and I will be supporting leaders again to have a conversation at PTS. If you've ever interacted with us, you know that we don't do lectures. We do conversations. As facilitators, we facilitate learning because we know that is when we put our heads together that we will learn. So I will be talking to leaders about how they are navigating change. And again, I think all of our conversations in each of the mini workshops are going to be twofold. How do you stand for others, but how do you also stand for yourself? So, as an entrepreneur, how do you drive those business goals, but stand for yourself? As an HR practitioner, how do you drive that culture internally, but stand for yourself? As a leader, how do you deliver on the objectives of the organization, but still stand for yourself? And then our fourth session is going to be on building resilience as a professional. So, how do you, as an professional within an organization, build that resilient muscle? How do you leverage emotional intelligence to support you through those shifts and changes, and to sometimes just say freeze and have the ocean stop so that you can take a breath? So it's going to be a very, very impactful morning. And, as we always say, we will make sure that you walk away with practical tools that you can utilize. This is not just a conversation about mental health, but we're really unpacking it further to talk about how you can be better equipped to do life and to do work more successfully. So join us. Go online, www.eqforafrica.com, and get more information. Thank you very much to all of you who are with us here today. Thank you to those who are going to watch this later. You're welcome to still share your comments, your reflections. We do come back and have a look at our socials. So please do comment if you've watched this after the fact. And if you have any questions about the conference, about anything else, do reach out to us. It's been great to have this conversation. Very big thank you to you, Catherine. A very big thank you to you, Susan, for being with me today. As I always say, if you bring the lunch, we will bring the learning. And I think that we have done that ably today. So ladies, let me say goodbye to you both as we wrap up. We started a little late today, and so we've gone a little over time, but I hope it has all been worth it. Thank you, Catherine. Looking forward to your session at the conference. Thank you to Susan. Looking forward to your session at the conference. And from me, allow me to say it is a wrap. Sophia, it's really been great having you here. EQ cultures lead to successful companies 100%. And if you as a leader, HR practitioner, or an entrepreneur just don't quite know where to start, join us at the conference. We'll be able to unpack that for you more. So thank you very much for your time today. Join us on the 16th of May for the third edition of the Mental Health Conference. Goodbye for now. Thank you very much for your time today.